Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another month of Ask Dr. Christy with AIDS United and the Melanated Movement. And I am so happy to be back with you after a month's break. And boy, oh boy, we are in the midst of my favorite time of the year. I know they love to say that Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, and it has its perks, it has its selling points, but there is nothing like this time of year, for it is Pride Month. It's really like Pride season because here in Atlanta, we do our Pride during October. So you make sure if you're in the Atlanta area that you go on out there and you see them. Go say hi to my friend Steven and my friend Forrest. But all over the country, Pride is happening, and I am so excited to be here. It is a great time. And so you are tuning in to the Melanated Movement and AIDS United special edition, the Pride edition of the Ask Dr. Christy show. And we're going to do things a little differently this episode. Typically we like to get into the nitty gritty. We like to get into the pieces around sexual health and wellness and autonomy and testing and prevention and stigma. And we love to give a little bit of life advice here on the Ask Dr. Christy show. And we were still going to stick true to what we do so well, but we're going to take a little pivot. Don't you love a little pivot? I love a little pivot. So we're going to jump in, obviously, with a few pieces of our favorite news updates that we're going to give out for this month. And of course, it's only fitting during this rainbow shrouded time that we make sure we have some good Pride updates. So I will say my heart is broken. I have been watching the screen all day to see if Atlanta Pride is going to announce this year's Grand Marshals. I really wanted to share them with you. There's some great people who are being, considered. Unfortunately, the announcements have not come out yet, but I want you to know, as last year's Atlanta Pride Grand Marshal, I am definitely keeping my eyes out to see who now do I get to go celebrate. However, what I do want to mention is that, typically kicking off the season is somewhere between California and New York State. Those two seem to always be neck and neck with who kind of kicks it off. But this year actually saw in Albany, New York, and I saw a record high of 30,000 people gathering at the Pride Capitol. So this has been a really interesting time. This is a time where we're seeing all across the country, different companies, governments, municipalities, public figures, political powers, they're really shifting. And what I find so beautiful and so amazing about Pride is that it is a reminder of our roots. And what we saw here in Albany, New York, is we saw a lot of people come together in a record high number, not just for visibility, because being seen is one thing, but baby, even a deer can be seen. And you know what happens to a deer who is seen too much. But it's the thing that we're doing here is we're building that structure up. There has been some disappointing things. I don't know if anybody's paid attention with what happened at Philadelphia Pride recently. We've seen some places where even the local law enforcement and city government have kind of turned loose. But what we saw in Albany is we saw a fabulous large gathering of all sorts of people, every shade, and certainly every hue of the rainbow. And that makes my heart feel really, really, really good. I personally got to be at Athens Pride here in Georgia about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, on the 6th. And let me tell you, Athens, of course, Georgia, we always like to say that Atlanta is the little blue in the whole state, but that's not really true. And you learn that more the more you kind of get out. And so from Albany, New York, all the way down to Athens, Georgia, we're getting to see a lot of really wonderful community demonstrations of people coming together. And let me tell you, if you missed Athens and you live in Georgia, baby, you missed out on a good time. But we also just had Columbus City Pride too. So if you are in the Columbus area and you got to enjoy that, please go ahead and send us some pictures. We would love to take a look. We'd love to know what you got going on. Some other things that we have, of course, a wonderful article published by LGBTQ Nation. I'm a big fan of them. I've written a couple pieces for them, and shout out to Molly Spregan, who's my editor there. We love Molly. We love the entire LGBTQ Nation and queer digital queer media team. But they published this really thought-provoking piece, and the author of the piece is Teresa Giles, who is the CEO of Hope and Help Center of Central Florida. And I honestly think that nobody could have done this piece as well as somebody. Teresa did marvelous, by the way. Nobody could have done this piece as well as somebody living and working in this field, providing these services, tackling these policy issues and these resourcing issues in the Florida landscape. You might remember a few episodes back, we talked about budget cuts. We talked about the very frightening reality that was facing individuals living in Florida, already staunchly far right, super conservative, Christian nationalist state that is geared towards disappropriating Black people from their rights, women from their bodies, queer people, and trans people from democratic and societal participation. Well, the changes that happened for a very short period around HIV funding and access would have left hundreds of thousands of people without treatment, out of treatment. And what we saw community efforts bring that funding back. And it really just reminds you that the pressure and the people's will is super important. But Teresa wrote this piece that I think is extremely thought-provoking. And as I said, could not have been done by anybody that doesn't understand the unique hallmarks of the Florida legislative and societal landscape. And what she talked about that HIV awareness still belongs at the heart of Pride. And I think that this is often something that is forgotten in this kind of modern era, this tableau, so to speak, of just how far advanced prevention and care around living with HIV or avoiding getting a positive status. It's made us see Pride as only being about our visibility and being about celebrating our uniqueness and about celebrating our identity and celebrating those who we love and self-expression and autonomy. And all of that is wonderful, valid, beautiful, completely here for it. And, we have to hold on to it. But I think that it's often forgotten in this kind of shift that Pride became about also creating and protecting the health of who we are. We saw during the 80s and 90s a time where governments, world powers, turned their backs on people and used religious stigma and religious rhetoric as justification for allowing these people to suffer, our people to suffer, a public health crises. And so it is really important. Teresa says in this article that it has been said that the first Pride was a riot sparked by the Stonewall Uprising in 1969. The meaning of Pride Month has expanded and evolved since Stonewall and the subsequent first Pride Parade in 1970. Though Pride was established before the rise of HIV and AIDS, HIV awareness and advocacy have stood at the center of Pride since the early days of the illness. A reminder, this is my word here, a reminder that it's always us that has us. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the article, I encourage you to go check it out. It's a wonderful piece of writing. Could not have been done better. Another piece of news that I have for you as we move into today is an exciting bit of news about the people that I love and respect so much here at AIDS United. Okay, so at AIDS United, the applications have been opened. Calling all dolls, calling all trans men. We need to come up with a really great name for the trans men. I think Kens, but I've talked to some of my friends that are trans men and they do not feel being called a Ken. So if you want to, make sure you leave us a comment down in the live stream or send me an email and tell me we need a nice, cute nickname for the handsome trans fellas. With the girls got dolls, what can we call the fellas? Let us know. But yes, calling all dolls and calling all handsome, smart, intelligent trans men. The applications are open for the Trans Leadership Initiative at AIDS United. This is a community of practice focused on supporting Black, Indigenous, people of color, and transgender and gender nonconforming people aged 18 to 27. Now, I'm not ageist, but do I look like I could pass for 27? Let me know down in the comments as well, because your girl might apply. I love to be in community, and what better opportunity? But no, on a real note, seriously, if you're between 18 and 27 and you are in this category, you're Black, you're brown, you're Indigenous, you're gender expansive, you're transgender, you're non-binary. Shout out to non-binary. Non-binary Pride is coming as well. Then please make sure you go ahead and check out the application, because we need you. You see, we often think at the community level that We need the organizations, and we do, but they are symbiotic relationships. Organizations need you because we are here to serve you. So make sure you send the application in and let me know if there's anything I can do to get you a good referral. So I want to go ahead and let you know that the application link is going to be posted right here on the screen momentarily, but you can go to tinyurl.com/shout 2026. Again, you can go ahead and go to tinyurl.com/shout 2026 to submit your application. Those applications close on Wednesday, July 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be 4 p.m. Central Time. Again, they close on July 15th, which is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 4 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you get your applications in. This is a program, this is an initiative that you do not want to miss out on. I can't wait to have you here with us, okay? We're going to go ahead and we're going to transition to my favorite part. You know I'm here for the pieces. I'm ready to get into the questions. So we're going to start with our first question, which was submitted to us. We got so many great questions since the last live stream. I just want to keep encouraging you to make sure you send us our questions because we have our last big finale coming up next month. And I want to make sure I leave you satisfied. So you can send all your questions to cperez@aidsunited.org. Also, don't hesitate to drop something in the comments. But anyway, every year someone says pride isn't what it used to be. What do you think we're gaining in this current era of pride that people might be overlooking? Okay, I see what you did here. This is a great question. I'm really, really proud of you for submitting this question. So I have to say, I myself am guilty of making statements similar to this, and it's not always a criticism. We have to be very careful that when we hear sometimes people are speaking, they're speaking from a place of nostalgia sometimes. They're speaking from a place of observation. They're speaking from a place of connectivity or even relativity. And for many of us that have gone to 20 or 30 years worth of prides, not to tell my age, we do have different ways of interacting with the concept of pride. But I think what you've done here is you've raised a really interesting and really salient point. And that is the fact that pride is a phenomena. It's an expression of the people of who it represents, which is LGBTQIA people. And so it changes as a reflection of us. I think that what we're gaining in this current era is that we're gaining this kind of intergenerational shift of LGBTQ people who are having to tussle with and embrace as well these expanding concepts around and expanding practicalities, realities around how do we talk about us? To quote Tony Michelle and Dean Sneed and the rest of the team from SNAPCO, Solutions Not Punishments Collaborative, one of the most powerful things that I ever took from, Tony Michelle, who was my boss there, great visionary, is that everybody's having conversations about us. However, what's most important is how we talk about us, particularly for those of us who are Black and brown, queer, gay, and trans people. And so I think what we see when we see pride and we see the differences is actually what we're seeing these conversations play out live and in flesh, not as these little moments of dialogue or these quips in the comments of Instagram and TikTok, but we're seeing what we've decided is valuable and what we decided is representational of who we are. And all of the stresses, anxieties, conflict, clashes, and moments of embrace and beauty that come with it. They play out every year from city to city on a cultural tableau across our nation, and each city and each region's pride. And I think that's what we're missing, is we're missing the fact that pride is a living, sentient thing in many ways, because it is an extension of who we are as people. So things don't always have to stay the same. It's really beautiful to watch them change and grow. And I guess my question on the individual level is, would you want to stay the same? Let's jump into our next question. Our next question. Pride celebrates visibility, but not everyone has the same ability to be visible safely. How do we make room for different expressions of pride without judging one another? So this is a tough question. This is a question that myself and a dear friend of mine have been wrestling with. My friend is a non-binary person, obviously under the trans umbrella. Gender expansive community is the phrase that I prefer. And I am a transsexual. And this is very different. We are all a part of a sort of gender radicalism in a way. But the reality is that even words that we hold in common can have different significance, different nuance, and different personal truth associated with it. For example, growing up, I had a very narrow connotation, very narrow acceptance of what trans, that word, meant. But as I've grown and I've spent more time in the world, and I've met people who interact with and express gender, enact gender, perform gender, and have their own valuations around what that looks like, or a lack of it as well. That has really expanded my understandings. And I think that one of the difficult things for this time of visibility is remembering that there are a lot of people that come from a different generation where visibility was not the primary aim. And that's not to say that visibility is a bad thing. I believe that it has its strengths, but two things can be true. I come from an era, for example, I've been transitioned for over 20 something years. I began my transition socially and hormonally at age 14. I was getting the hormones from the girls on the streets, baby. But, the reality is the women who raised me as a young, mostly homeless, queer youth, trans youth surviving on the streets of Baltimore, there were very different values and ideations that they shared with us and imparted to us. And definitely for that generation of trans women, transsexual women, the desire was to assimilate, to have the privilege of navigating society and being seen and interacted with as the thing that we identified as, which was as women. Now, obviously, as we've come into an era where there is a need to make new space at the table, not that there are new phenomena, because I believe that non-binary people, for example, have always been here. And I believe that pansexuals have always been here, and any other type of people have always been here. I believe like the Bible don't get many things right, but it get a couple, and it says that nothing new under the sun. So the reality is that I think that what that visibility is doing is allowing people that have not had a chance to sing much in the song. There's always a couple divas, there's always a couple Diana Rosses. But we need to be able to make sure that the Supremes and the Temptations and the backup people, the people that don't get their part of the song very often, are also able to be heard. And so I feel like that is what the visibility has done. But I want to caution, visibility without education is a dangerous thing. Visibility without protections is a dangerous thing. A deer, as I said earlier in this broadcast, I'm very fond of using this anecdote, if you can't tell, a deer can be quite visible. But that visibility opens it up to one or two things. One, for people to avoid impacting it with a vehicle, or two, for a hunter to take it down. And I feel like in a lot of ways, some of the ways that we have gone about accumulating visibility without some degrees of consideration, some degrees of sensitivity, and some degrees of just preparing better in terms of like the infrastructure, the landscape of like education and tolerance that we've managed to push, not only externally, but internally too, because there are individuals who are gay or lesbian or non-binary or transsexual who are homophobic or, don't like lesbians or don't like studs or don't like trans or don't like this or that. Even inside of our own community, there's sufficient division. So that creating that visibility without creating that infrastructure of education and that infrastructure of like connectivity has exposed us to this modern political climate, this socio-political climate where we are under attack. So I guess the takeaway here is that visibility is important, but we need to look at how does survival and how does a better future, does that mean the same thing for everybody in the community? And how do we make that intersectional, and how do we protect ourselves moving forward if we're going to keep ourselves visible, which also means exposed? I know that was a lot of information. Sorry about that. I have another question that just came in. You guys know I love to prioritize those live questions that come in, although we do get questions throughout the month via email and DM. But this one just came in. It says, sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to know certain things about sexual health, relationships, or LGBTQ history by now. How do we stay curious without feeling embarrassed about what we're still learning? Just be honest. You know, I love me a know-it-all, but I love me a know-it-all who truly knows it all. You know, I think that it's wonderful to be in a process of learning. I have 27 letters after my name, and I learn all the time as a journalist, working in policy, as a content creator. Every time when y'all see me make these videos on social media, I've probably just been researching that in the past few days, or brushing up on it or something. I think that there is no shame in a lack of learning. And I think that generally in society, we don't really associate shame or something dishonorable with continuing to learn. Look at how many community colleges and universities offer like ongoing education, not only for professionals, but also for like senior citizens and stuff. I think the reality is that there are so many parts of being a living person in this world and in this country right now, with survival, cost of living, the fact that the system has been designed to trick us into working, our whole lives away. You can't afford anything, all these things. So, if you're not an expert on every part of even your own, dimensions of existence, that's okay. Nobody needs to put that pressure on you. And I don't encourage you to put a pressure on yourself. I think the reality is that when we focus on people and we focus on the things that touch our hearts and our minds, that's what's going to keep that curiosity alive. And I think the willingness to just want to be better people so that we can bring out the best in other people, if that makes any sense. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on to my next question here. Social media can make it seem like everyone is having a life-changing Pride Month. How do we focus on real connection instead of comparing ourselves to everyone else's highlight reel? I'm gonna let you know right now. Stop believing everything you see on social media. Fact checked every bit of information from social media, but you need to understand something. Very few people are having the best of anything at any given moment and sharing it online. Because if I'm having the best of anything, I'm not stopping what I'm doing to document that. I might make a video afterwards or something like that, Here's the thing. Social media is all polished. It's all glamour. I tell people all the time that meet me in my personal life because they get an idea from my social media or they get an idea from panels or things that I do. That is marketing. That is PR. That is polish. And it's the same for other people. Pride is not about some miraculous, paradigm shifting experience. If you can have that, if it can be that for you, that's beautiful and that's wonderful. I just don't want you to attach that type of significance to it. And I don't want you to live your life for other people. And it doesn't even just come down to pride. I mean, it comes down to every part of our life. We are pressured and we're sold this delusion that compels us to compare ourselves, contrast and compare all the time to make us feel like we are coming up short somewhere or we're not, there's something wrong with us or we could be doing better or something like that. And I just want you to know, you are perfectly fine. And pride is about you just having a moment to breathe and let go of the expectations. Don't take on additional expectations. This moment is about you and it's about the people that you love. And it's about the people that look and sound and believe and think and show up in the world in ways similar to how you do. So what I would say to you as a final bit of closing on that is just it doesn't need to end up as a social media reel. Go create your own highlights, live your life and soak it up. Soak it up. As someone in the community, I sometimes feel pressure to always be informed, engaged, and speaking up. How do you stay connected to important issues without burning yourself out? Yeah. So I will say, I think that this pressure is both for those inside of the LGBTQI community and external. I think that there is a lot of pressure on us to be experts, to be plugged in. And this comes with a lot of stresses for your psycho-spiritual and emotional health and whatnot. What I want to tell you is choose a few issues that you're most interested about. Environmental justice, LGBTQ issues, reproductive justice. Choose a couple issues, 3, 4 at the tops. And I would tell you to go ahead and set up Google Alerts. If you don't know what Google Alerts is, just go to your Google browser and search, how do I set up Google Alerts? This is for me as a journalist, as a scholar, as a content creator, as a policy analyst. This is one of the ways that I stay in contact and up to date regularly with things that I'm interested about. And it allows me to get different sources of information. So what a Google Alerts does is I will set something like trans, incarceration, policing reform, surveillance. It will let you set keywords. And every day, or you can set the frequency, you can set it for once a week, once a month. I don't encourage once a month. I encourage a bare minimum of once a week, daily, if you can deal with it. Mine is set up for twice a day. But and then you set these key phrases. And what it does is Google will return to you. It will index and return to you links for news stories from different times. You can ask Google to diversify. Like I have mine diversified so that I'm not just getting it from CNN, MSB. I want Al Jazeera. I want BBC. I want everything. Okay. And this will allow you to stay looped in on topics that you care about without like having to go out of your way. And also it limits the amount of exposure you have. So you get to stay kind of informed without getting that like overexposure and that burnout, if that makes any sense. I think this is a really low key, low effort way to like stay looped in and like protect your peace at the same time. Okay. All right. As a black and brown, 1 second, I'm in glasses. As black and brown LGBTQ plus people become more visible in media, do you think there's sometimes pressure to represent an entire community? How do we navigate with that? Okay, yes. Okay. I'm going to read the question one more time just because I kind of messed it up a little bit, and I want you all to hear it correctly. It says, as black and brown LGBTQ plus people become more visible in media, do you think there's sometimes pressure to represent an entire community? How do we navigate that without losing ourselves? Absolutely 100% yes, that pressure exists. The reality is that there is this myth. It is a trope and it is false. And it is used against us as individuals. And we use it ourselves to give ourselves access to spaces that we don't quite deserve yet. Experience is not authority. Let me explain. I say this all the time. Experience is not authority. Your experience allows you to speak to your uniqueness, your particularities, your individuality, your perspective. But if you are not somebody that has done a robust amount of work and research and worked in a field, like you might be able to talk about the stresses of being a black trans woman, your mental health, the things that you know from being with your girlfriends and what they've said to you, things like that. But to make generalizations about black trans mental health overall, speaking for everybody, that is a position we get put into a lot. And I want to draw a careful distinction here. This is not just unique to black and brown LGBTQ people. This is a human condition thing where we are asked to, or we find ourselves positioned to be representational of others. But the amount of pressure in no other place is applied the same way it is applied to black and brown people in general. Every time a black woman reaches a point of excellence, she is expected to continue to be the distinguisher from this trope of like the other black women. Okay. And every time a black woman is this or there, we like to generalize, unfortunately. And we see it happen most perniciously and most destructively towards people of color. That's why, for example, a white guy, most statistically likely, is to go shoot up a school. But we very rarely hear all white people given the same generalizations as we hear terrible things said about people of color and about particularly people of color who are also LGBTQIA. So this kind of pressure is not just due to the fact of like sexual or gender identity distinctions, but it is most definitely a particularity of being a person of color in the Western hemisphere. Okay. I think that the unique component of it is because we're talking about we're existing in a time where there is both more information and more visibility than ever before, alongside more conflation and more flattening of experiences than ever before. So I do think that a lot of people are going to continue to find themselves put into a position where they are having to kind of be the unofficial elected representative of demographics that they speak for. I find this all the time. I get people like, because a lot of people don't really know in person, like a lot of Afro Latinas. And then like, I was born here. So yes, I'm Afro Latina, but I'm also bien gringa, super gringa. Okay. So to ask me to speak for Afro Caribbean Latinos is disingenuous because I can't speak for them. And I think that we need to start being okay with using I statements and saying like, this is where I stand and this is what is relevant for me, or even for the people in my close circle. I think that navigating it is going to be a matter of us being firm about that we are not a monolith, because if we don't do that and we continue to position ourselves as class authorities because of our experience, then we're going to get treated like a monolith. All right. So next question. I hear a lot of conversations about finding your people, but sometimes community can be messy too. Clock it. Clock it. How do you know when it's time to work through conflict in a community space versus when it's time to move on? Ooh. Oh my word. Okay. So I believe, I always say I will try anything 2 times. Try it the first time for the experience, and the second time to be certain of how I felt about the experience. Did I like it? Did I not like it? I think the same rule is my rule for conflict. We have one time to bump heads about something that is unreasonable. Okay. And now this is my personal, this is going back to my last question. This is my advice. This is mine. This is how I handle me. Okay. We have one time to bump heads in a way that is contentious or conflict oriented about something that is unreasonable. I want to stress that word, unreasonable. If it is something that crap could resolve, communication resolves all problems. It's a communication model that I teach. I've been teaching it for 10 years now. I started off teaching it inside of prisons. So if we are unable to move beyond that, we can seek community resolution. We can do mediators. We can do, de-escalation, conflict resolution. We can do whatever you want to do. Okay. But if we continue to bump heads over something that is unreasonable, I will just completely X that relationship out. And the reason why I say that is because life is short. Life is so short. This year, I have had so many changes in my life. And this year, I have had so many girlfriends, people that I know or that I know of, who have died. This year, I found out that the HRC is no longer, the Human Rights Campaign is no longer tracking the death, the violent acts committed against trans women in a time where we are more vulnerable than we have been in a very long time. So when I take these things into perspective, it's like, I'm not even promised tomorrow. Do you know how many people walk out of their door thinking they're going to the gym, they're going to the grocery store? Like while we're sitting here having this nice conversation, there's somebody in the world right now there's many somebodies having the worst moment of their life, suffering violence or suffering sexual assault or suffering the loss of somebody dear to them, true to them. And you think I want to waste my time with people that I'm supposed to be in community with, that I'm supposed to have something in common with? That doesn't mean that we're never going to disagree. We're human. But if we continue to disagree about unreasonable things, if there's conflict drivenness, if there is an inability to communicate healthily, if there is divisiveness and backbiting and all of that, I don't have time for that. And you should not have time for that either, because the sad reality is that for the vast majority of us, those of us who are not the Beyoncés, the, Martin Luther Kings, the Michelle and Barack Obamas of the world, okay? 5 minutes after we're dead, there's only going to be a couple conversations about us. 1 year after we're dead, there might be one conversation about us. 2 years after we're dead, you'll be hard pressed to get anybody to think about you. So I refuse to live my life, and you should refuse to live your life being caught up in stress, heartache, judgment, discord. Let go and let God. Move on, find other people, make your peace, let them seek their bliss, and you seek yours. Okay? Okay. All right, beloved. Our next question. Sometimes joy can feel surprisingly uncomfortable when you've spent a long time surviving. Why do you think people struggle to fully embrace joy when it finally shows up? This is a good question. This is a question I've been going through myself over the past 2 years. It's scarcity, it's fear, it's trauma response. A little bit about me, I watched my mother get murdered when I was 5 years old. I grew up in foster care where I was subjected to physical and sexual, abuse. And by the time I was 13, I was living most of the time homeless. By the time I was 14, I was homeless. And I grew up in community with other runaways, other social rejects, queer youth, Black and brown youth on the streets of Baltimore, Reisterstown, Cherry Hill, Druid Hill. That was my stomping area. And we were community together, and I was involved in sex work, and I was involved in sex work and addiction. And then at 19, I got wrapped up in a sting, and I was charged with human trafficking, and I was very terribly and inaccurately characterized, and I went to prison. And I worked very hard to rebuild my life from prison so that I could do something meaningful for the girls and the boys that had backgrounds like me, people that were broken, people that the world never gave a chance, and they deserve a chance. And every day, despite the fact that I'm a doctor now, despite the fact that I have the honor and the privilege of working with platforms like AIDS United and Melanated Movement, despite the fact that I have a nonprofit, despite the fact that I work with people returning from incarceration, I work with foster youth that have adulted out, they have aged out of the system, despite the fact that I get to do policy work, despite the fact that I get to, create meaningful change in the world, I get to be a social change engineer, I struggle regularly with both imposter syndrome and the fear that it will all get taken away, that it will all go away. So when you have come from a place of instability, a place of scarcity, a place of loss and abandonment, a place of struggle, when your nervous system gets a chance to just breathe, you don't know how to act. You don't know how to deal with that. Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't know how to deal with that because all you've done is run your whole life. The idea that you can now walk, that you can stroll, that you can stop to smell those flowers, it's inconscionable to you. That's unheard of. And so I want you to know that if you are feeling like you can't stop to soak up the joy, the best thing you can do for yourself, the most healing thing for your regulatory system is going to be taking that moment, take that joy, find the things that make you feel good. Do the things, please, by all means, good God, do the things that give you purpose and meaning right now. Do the things that make you feel good. I don't care what it is, because you deserve it. You deserve the joy and you deserve the stability. And I'm so glad that you don't have to run anymore. So we can walk together. We can walk together, okay? My God. Yeah, so that is the last question right there. And that was a beautiful question. And thank you so much for whoever sent that question in. It was a wonderful question. So we have another segment that we're going to do called the Hot Take segment. It was designed by our fabulous program manager here at the Melanated Movement Engagement Portfolio. And this segment is called Hot Takes. We're going to go ahead and wrap up our show today with hot takes. And our first hot takes is, what's something younger LGBTQ plus people are getting right that doesn't get enough credit? I will tell you, I think that one of the things that younger LGBTQ people are getting right that I think other people are not being able to really reconcile with is they're breaking boundaries in a way that we never were able to. And when I say they're breaking boundaries, they are so intersectional. I see young LGBTQ people in every space, from anime, momocon, to environmental justice, to tech, to you name it, they're there, and they're creating inroads with their peers, with their contemporaries of their generation. Gen Z is the single most impressive thing I have seen in my life. And I know I say that like I'm 95 years old, but I've lived a lot of life. Trust me, I've seen a lot. I've folded 2 times the amount of experience in my 35 years. And I think that their ability, and I don't know if this is just due to the generation, because I have to give the non-LGBTQ Gen Z obviously some credit too, because they're reaching back. That inroad is being made both ways. But I think the sheer audacity to live despite any consequences as they truly are, openly, happily, to make inroads, to make new friendships, to reach across lines and divides, I think it's marvelous and I think it's beautiful. And I think that it just might be the prescription that saves us all. So you tell me what you think. Leave your comments. I would love to know. Let us look at our last hot take for the day. Have we gotten better at calling things out than calling people in? 100%. 100%. And I am not sure how I feel about this. I have mixed feelings. The reason why is I believe in saving who can be saved, but I will say, I don't know how many people watch the Titanic. Well, I think everybody watched the Titanic. Let me roll that back so I don't get canceled. Everybody watched the Titanic. But I always resonated with the scene because I was like, she was like, I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never let go. And the meantime, like, she's trying to get him off the dresser, the door, or whatever. I am very much that girl. Like, you got one chance to get on this floating dresser. And if you don't get on, baby, I'm going to get rid of you. And that's the calling out part for me. The calling in is where we try to bring people to, the table. We try to have that, what do they call it? Shoot, what are these old folks used to, I can't think of it. It's come to Jesus. Yes. I want to have that come to Jesus moment, but we only going to go bother Jesus one time. You're not going to have me up here leaving this man voicemails. So you better get it together. All right. Cause he don't need all them messages from me. All right. So we're going to have one come to Jesus. You got this one chance for us to get right. And if you continue to do something wrong, you could do something that is harmful to the movement, that is harmful to the integrity of the movement. And I'm really big on both moral and intellectual honesty. In almost all of my content anywhere, you will hear this phrase pop up. I am really big on talking about moral intellectual honesty. And I think that we need to be holding people responsible. We need to be calling people out, because one thing we should not have is we should not have frauds. We should not have charlatans. We should not have oath breakers. We should not have exploiters. We should not have distrustworthy individuals. We should not have opportunistic individuals in positions of communal authority. Now, I'm not talking about their past. I'm not talking about what they did before, because anybody can change. I'm talking about people who are currently in their ministry, for a lack of a better word, and they're being poor stewards. See, any bit of responsibility, any bit of power, any bit of influence that is given to you is not yours. You are a steward of it. And as a steward, you must care for it. You must be a good custodian, and you must multiply that. So when that influence, when that power, when that position, that beacon gets past the next person, it shines brighter and it accomplishes more than even it could when it was in your hand. That is what a steward does. It takes something and it multiplies it and makes it greater. So if we cannot call them in, let's call them out. And that is my hot take on that. So I want to just go ahead and take a moment to again say thank you so much to every single one of you that have been here with us since the beginning of this project. 2026 has been truly, and I mean this with all of my spirit, truly one of the most gracious, amazing, beautiful, and challenging years from me personally. And I know that that is a sentiment that resonates with so many people. And I just want to say thank you, sincerely. Thank you to each of you for being here, for being a part of everything that we're doing collectively together. I want to say thank you so much to AIDS United and to Melanated Movement for taking this time to spotlight Pride Month, for working with me. I want to say thank you so much to Carly, our program manager, for helping us get some great interactions from people about Pride. And I want to remind you that we are here for the final episode of the Ask Dr. Christy show next month. July 8th is our next episode at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I expect to see you. I'll be here live and in color. So until now, and well, until then, you take care of yourself. We love you so much, and we'll see you then. Bye, beloved.